Good morning. It is Monday, August 26th, in the unholy year of 2024. I'm Thomas Caldwell of the Aurelian Column, and this is the Monday Morning Report. Well, it's finally over. The Democratic National Convention in Chicago. It came and went. Most of the speeches consisted of people who were basically just saying how much they hated Donald Trump. No real plans to clean up the mess made over the last 4 years by the current administration. There were lots of protests outside, which was to be expected. Chicago's like that. Democrats are like that. The times we live in are like that. Kamala Harris was formally nominated, of course, and supposedly is doing well in the polling. She's neck and neck and exceeding Mr. Trump in some places, and nobody with the least bit of intelligence should believe that. The fix is already in, people, and the deep state will do everything legal and illegal to prevent Donald Trump from becoming president. Please watch, wait, and pray. But the big news was Robert Kennedy Jr. ending his campaign and endorsing Mr. Trump, and he did that at a Trump rally, no less, on stage. Some people think this will be a slam dunk now for Mr. Trump in the election, and under most circumstances it probably would be. But don't underestimate the dark forces at work within what is left of our republic. Yet it is telling, a high-profile member of the Kennedy family endorsing a Republican for president. Hath hell frozen over? One must wonder. Now, in other news, the Middle East continues to do what it's good at doing, which is namely making the rest of the world thankful they don't live there. It's beginning to look like there won't be a big knockdown drag-out between Israel and Iran, with some other states coming along for the ride. Now, why would that be? Well, you got to remember something, that people have been killing each other and slaughtering each other and hating each other for religious reasons, and that's what this is all about, religion. You know, that big god from the Bronze Age that gave birth to these three so-called great religions? Well, maybe they didn't get the message or something, but if they're supposed to be worshiping the same deity, why are they at each other? I've never really figured that out. Hate is a very useful thing when it comes, one, to religion, and two, politics, and together they make a very powerful mix. If you have somebody who is your hated enemy, the last thing you want to do is get rid of them, because then you won't have anything unifying you. If people in the Middle East stopped killing each other, well, their governments would have to start coming up with, solutions to make their lives better. Wow, think of that. They'd have to start building roads, coming up with better schools. If you don't have an enemy to hate like Israel, and you're Iran, people are going to start asking some questions as to why certain things aren't the way they are. Or Lebanon, for that matter. Hey, why do we have all these people from Palestine, or what used to be Palestine, in our country lobbing missiles? You see, you have to have anger and hatred for a tyranny to function. And this has been going on forever. Look, anywhere in history, you have to have an enemy. You have to have war if you're going to be tyrannical. Otherwise, people are going to say, that's not a good idea. Let's go on and do something more constructive, like build universities, or come up with medical advances, or make the world a better place, grow food, go to other planets. But, of course, there's too much money to be made by people involved in war, and that's not just on the side of the United States. Believe me, there's people that are making out big time in that part of the planet as well. So a lot of them are probably sitting around thinking, well, do we really want to make peace with Israel or get rid of Israel? Or the Israelis, on the other hand, saying, do we really want peace with these people? Because then we're going to have to start doing other things. You see, they don't want to kill the goose. that lays the golden eggs. They'd rather children get killed, but not the goose. So that part of the world is going to continue to be what it's good at, which is misery, pain, agony, and a serious drain of treasure and blood for other countries, namely the United States. Someone once threw a number at me, which is probably pretty accurate. Ever since all the troubles began in the Middle East after Israel was founded, the United States has expended somewhere in the area of $15 trillion, trillion with a T, on not only aid to that small country, but also aid to all the other countries in the form of economic aid, which is basically giving the money, and military aid, which is basically giving the money and then using that money to buy weapons that are produced in the countries that give them money in the first place. Sound confusing? Well, a little bit. Think of what we could have done with that money. $15 trillion, give or take. We could have colonized other planets for that. We could have solved a lot of problems here in the United States that we've had over the last 60, 70 years, and we've had a lot of them. We still do. This is why the traditional American custom, which we haven't had in anyone's lifetime, of minding our own business and taking care of our own and seeing to our own problems and treating other nations with respect, well, that can be a very expensive, bad habit. That's what Big Brother used to keep going. Hey, speaking of Big Brother, by the way, the United Kingdom is, of course, throwing people in jail left and right for Facebook posts or making podcasts like this. And calling into question why they've allowed a massive invasion of their country. I remember seeing a sign now that people aren't allowed to walk dogs because it might offend those from other countries who don't like dogs. And if you question that, well, the cops are going to come by and throw you into prison. Big Brother's alive and well in the United Kingdom, or as they used to call it, Airfield 1, I think it was. Now, back to the war front, a few other things being reported now in that department. The Navy is having trouble finding enough personnel to cruise ships. So they're going to be taking a few out of service. These are mostly logistical ships manned by the Merchant Marine, but you still have to move stuff around by sea. You can't put everything on airplanes. They don't have enough people in the Navy to man these ships, so they're going to have to stop using some of them. Mark my words, they are going to start talking about a draft, mandatory military service or lottery system or some such thing after this election. With Trump, it is possible there will be a draft, but with Harris, it will be a certainty. They need bodies. They need cannon fodder for all these foreign engagements. And people don't want to play that game anymore. So that is something to look out for. So when you're voting this coming election day, remember that, especially if you have children that are approaching military age. Now, one story I've been following and been only reporting on a little bit is one that is close to my heart, and I was waiting to hear what was going to be determined by that once great federal agency known as NASA. And that is the fate of the Starliner capsule, the one that's up at the International Space Station that's not working properly. That's a very upsetting story at all levels, and I got very angry when I saw the NASA press conference the other day where they announced their big decision. I'm going to explain it in technical terms. The Starliner capsule is broken. It's broken. It doesn't work. There, I've said it. It was obviously poorly designed, poorly manufactured is a certainty, cost a fortune, $5 to $6 billion, I think at last count, and it doesn't work. There were 2 astronauts that were supposed to be up there for 8 days, and now they're going to be up there for 8 months. NASA decided they weren't going to risk bringing them back in the thing. They're going to bring it back to, quote-unquote, examine it. That is, if it doesn't spin out of control and burn up in the atmosphere. And if there were astronauts in there, that would have been a very bad day. They're going to be waiting for the Dragon capsule of SpaceX, Mr. Elon Musk's operation, to rescue them in February. Now, in spite of all the nice, smiley talk, I don't think those 2 astronauts are very happy. They obviously weren't scheduled to stay there that long. They probably don't have as much to do as we're being told. But what really I was offended by was the mealy-mouthed bureaucrats at that NASA press conference. They were just all smiles saying, Boeing is still very, very much into they think that this is a great piece of equipment. And they were putting such a nice gleam on everything. It was offensive to anyone who has followed the history of the space program. It was ridiculous. They were trying to put a nice smiley face on a disastrous situation. Thank goodness there was a space station to go to, or those 2 very, very brave individuals would have probably met a very nasty fate. This is not just about a boondoggle run by Boeing, which was also a once great institution. This is about everything in our society not functioning right anymore. Let me give you a perspective. All the Starliner is a hopped-up, modernized version of an Apollo space capsule that was operating more than half a century ago. And those worked. And those were put together in a few years. What's different? Well, let me give you first a perspective in how things have gone downhill. Not being able to build a more advanced space capsule, which is basically what the Starliner is. It's a higher-end version, more high-tech, you would think, of an Apollo capsule that was built in the late 60s and operated into the 70s. It would be the equivalent of engineers not being able to build a Sopwith Camel biplane in the year 1971. A biplane that was used in World War I, that was made of canvas and wood. In half a century, we can't build something reliable that's relatively simple. We're not talking going to the moon with this thing, at least not now. We're talking about being able to build a rudimentary space capsule. We can't do it. Now, Mr. Musk can, probably because he operated in a different way. And the way is meritocracy. Boeing is very big on their diversity, and inclusiveness. If you're building something, mathematics does not know race, gender, sexual orientation, religion, or anything like that at all. It's all mathematics. It's all engineering. And you either have it or you don't. And that's the only explanation. And this is something that you see throughout our civilization right now. People are being employed. They're being put into important positions because of some arbitrary desire to make everybody the same. We're not. Engineering, building things, is not something that's capable of being operated in any other way than merit. The Romans, 2,000 years ago, were building aqueducts for hundreds of miles. They were doing their math with Roman numerals. Try that sometime. But 50 years ago, we were landing on the moon, and we did that with only a few years' warning. And in half a century, the same period of time from the time a Sopwith Camel was being built during World War I to the time we were landing on the moon, we cannot duplicate that engineering level reliably. That's insane. And to see NASA with its I would just go recommend watching that news conference. You can find it up on YouTube, I think BitChute, a few other places, probably the NASA website itself, C-SPAN, the usual places. Just look at it and just put on your intelligence cap and watch it. Unless we return to using merit as the measurement by which we accomplish or pursue anything, we're really done. I guarantee you that in Russia and in China and in other places thinking of a space program, you don't get a job based on what church you go to or what your skin color is. You get a job based on if you're good at it or not, at least if you're working on something like a space program. We'll see what happens. I really, really hope those two astronauts, who I'm sure their family and friends are not happy at their circumstances and don't think otherwise. They're basically inside a series of tubes for many months. Enough about making America great again. Let's make America intelligent and accomplished again. That's it for today. If you like these reports and want to support my work, please consider a paid subscription. Share this podcast with others. I can be reached at feedback@aureliancolumn.com. That's feedback@aureliancolumn.com. I'm up on X. I'm just going to call it that from now on. The social media platform known as X. My handle there is MICCAMPEN. That's MICCAMPEN. I'm also up on Telegram, the platform where the CEO was just arrested the other day. That's another story for another time. We'll get into that next week. And I'm also on other social media outlets if you want to find me there. I'm not on Facebook. You can also reach the headquarters of this particular podcast at aureliancolumn.substack.com. That's it for today. Until we meet again, be good, be safe, be vigilant, and good day.